Sure.
Well, if you are watching this video, you are watching our seminar series of the month of April. And today we have a really awesome seminar with one of our favorite community members, Dave Dame, who has also an amazing name. He was also on our podcast, which is crazy inspirational about, I don't know, everything, adaptability and just being amazing as you are, Dave. And today, you're going to be talking to us about leadership and agility towards the self-autonomous culture and anything else that you want to talk about. So we have some people on the call. Stuart, it's going to be an intimate, open question and answer. And then maybe, Dave, you can start us off with a
Hi,
little bit about
Stu. How are
what you
you?
do.
Start off with what?
Start off with maybe a little bit about what you do and your philosophy, and then, we can jump in and ask some questions.
Sounds good. So my name's Dave Dame. For the last about 8 or 10 years, I've been working with either startups that wanted to really grow to a large enterprise or work with enterprises that wanted to move to more of a startup look and feel. But the one thing in common that they all had was you had to create a culture of self-autonomy, empathy, to really get them all the individuals that were going to work together as collective teams. So luckily, knock on wood, I've been very lucky to have had a proven track record that allowed me to continue to take on more and more challenges of helping teams not only deliver software, but to build organizations that people could really have that safety and comfort to be able to really stretch themselves and rapidly leverage that bottom-up innovation.
And so, no, I mean, Stuart, also feel free to jump in and ask any questions you have, because this is David's an incredible mind, so this is an amazing opportunity. And I've gotten to speak to him before, so I don't want to hog the entire conversation. Dave, I guess, for people listening, what do you think is the most interesting thing to focus on in terms of helping people kind of just improve in a certain area? Or, like we talked about, moving more towards this self-autonomous culture. How can we do that better than we're doing now?
Well, that's a good question, because usually when I'm brought in as a leader, it's like they want to ask me what my management philosophy is with the people and everything about how do you grow people, how do you manage people. And it's really based on the individuals, where really I think my approach, and really the approach where leadership is going, it's less about managing the project and less about the individuals, and really to try to create an environment of safety where they can do trust. And really what I like to do is really first get comfortable, right? Because we always say we want teams to fail fast and fail often. But unfortunately, the leaders never really share all their mistakes and failures. So it's almost like we're asking them to do something that we're not willing to share. So I start off by sharing all my mistakes I made along the way. And luckily, I have a whole bunch to choose from. So, but it's really to build that safety of mistakes we made, so they can begin to be able to share their mistakes as learning opportunities with each other. So really, I want to, really get them involved in the problem that they're trying to solve. And really what I like to call is the commander's intent, by really to set that intention and then allow them to really self-organize around that. And when you allow them to self-organize, we always say we want self-autonomous teams. But to be fair, teams don't know what it means to be self-autonomous, because they came from a culture where either all their actions were directed or recorded in tasks. So really, you got to begin creating that culture where how do we communicate? How do we just kind of go with vaguity and unknown, right? Because the reason why they don't want to embrace self-autonomy is they're used to being held accountable if they're wrong. So that's what ties into creating a safe environment. And then really to begin to show them you have trust. So I'll purposely, and it's hard on me because of my helpful nature, I will purposely try not to offer any help or direction or insight. I'll let them struggle while they solve the problems themselves to really get used to collaborating with each other and coming up with solutions. They always want to naturally fill me in or get me to decide on everything. But really, I want to get them used to making their own decisions. Because if I can grow decision makers, that's better than any skill I can do. Because then they get the confidence and the comfortability to quickly make those decisions. And in those mistakes, it's really building a learning culture or a learning organization where let's not let perfection get in the way of great, and let's celebrate the learnings as much as we do the success. And then align measurements along that way so it can be valued, and not only in terms of compensation, but create a visible wall of all the mistakes we as a team made together and be able to walk that journey of remember when we thought this, and then continually walk the wall of what we've learned and how we got to be there. Because it's in that self-reflection and that comfort of how we dealt with that initial ambiguity till we got here that we really begin to develop our muscle for really running rapid experiments.
So can I interrupt, or can I
Yes,
ask a question?
of course, please.
That's a brilliant idea. So you're proposing sort of sort of a lessons learned wall as opposed to just sort of the mistakes, but kind of like, so this is the lessons and this is how we learned from those mistakes.
Exactly. It's posting the mistake or what we thought of at the time and then what we learned from it because of it. Because the more we're exposed to it, the more we see it, the more we get comfort about not having to be right, but value what is learned.
And how do you coach people to get okay with making mistakes? I find a lot of times, especially with leaders, they're so used to having to be right in organizations that it can
Yeah,
cause a little bit of, it's okay to reveal that you're human.
no, I completely agree. So let's first start off with how do you coach the team to get used to that? Because I think the teams and leaders, like you mentioned, Stuart, are almost you got to treat them differently because you're right. They're used to having to be right. So first off, with the team, we begin to start sharing every time a lesson learned, but we treat it as a success. So if I made a mistake of hey, I thought this was what the stakeholders thought was value, and we did 2 or 3 sprints and found out we had a different understanding of value. Instead of chastising me, the team will learn to go, well, Dave, unfortunately now we know we got to make sure we need to align on what value is. So what we learn going forward is maybe we come with the stakeholders to come with that common agreement. So they're not holding the mistake I made over me, but I'm forcing them to pull me out of a very vulnerable state because we're always harder on ourselves than we are on everyone else. So they begin to pull me out of it like I pull them when they make a mistake. And it really builds that supportive culture of help us feel better from our screw ups than we currently feel. And by forcing them to help pull me out of it, they get used to pulling out their teammates, and then they get to see me do it as well to create it. Now, the leadership thing, that's a different animal, and especially when you work in some legacy organizations where they climb the ladder for being right. They climb the ladder for making the right decision every time. I kept reminding them, like, how many experiments did you have to go through to get there? And really, it turns out to a lot of times, they really create a big initiative or big project. It's really getting them to decompose it all into a bunch of smaller experiments to get them to even push that decision making down. Because you're right, they like to be right. That's how they've gotten there. And, let's call a spade a spade. They've taken the credit for being right or been a beneficiary of it. But really, to get them to decompose things, to feel more comfortable, to push more decisions down to the team. And really, how I really get to see if a leader is maturing into a self-organizing culture is how many decisions did they used to make and how many decisions did they push down to the team this week so they can rapidly experiment quicker. Because if every decision goes to the leader becomes the bottleneck. And it's really calling them out on their delay times too. Like if I have to wait for a decision, I start clocking the time with my team to go, this is how much that decision costed us. So the more we make it visible, the more they're eager to push some of that down. Did that help?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The cost of delay around decision making is something that is startling to leaders when they realize there's a tangible money cost to delaying decisions, and you can actually quantify that sometimes.
Yeah, and I think John Cutter wrote a great article on it lately. He publishes a lot of good stuff, but he did one on the cost of delay of decision and what the cost of making low risk decisions are. But we really got it. I think right now, Stuart, I think really decision making is the biggest leg or holding agility back. We've coached these teams to be self-autonomous within their boundaries, but still, I think now the lack of responsiveness and quickly making decisions are the new things slowing up the team. It's not necessarily DevOps. It's not necessarily running in a gated waterfall. I think it's the cost they're waiting while they're waiting for that decision to be made. And because that cost is so high, we can't experiment as often because we lose a lot of that time and expense. When if we push that down, we can make a lot more course corrections.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Welcome, Marita, to the conversation. Just feel free to chime in and ask David a question if you want. It's been a super exciting conversation. Stuart, do you have another question right now? Or I had one if you didn't have one.
No, go ahead.
David, you said something before that I liked. You were talking about how people should be okay with not doing perfection, but being okay being great. And I like that because I'm the farthest thing from a perfectionist. But I know that a lot of people do get really, really caught up in like it needs to be perfect. And then they end up not doing things or they're not as productive as they could be. What advice would you give to people who can't adopt that kind of forego perfectionism for greatness?
That's a great question. What I like to do is, so for everybody on the call, what you don't know about me is I was born with cerebral palsy. So I physically couldn't walk, still can't walk actually, all my life. And about 4 years ago, I actually trained 3 years prior to do a Terry Fox walk. So my friends helped me walk 5 kilometers. Now, when you talk to somebody and say, not knowing I have a disability that I walk 5 kilometers, people would be like, well, it's only 5K. What's the big deal? But really, success is relative to the person. And I didn't get to 5 kilometers overnight. Like I said, it took 3 years of preparing. It took 3 years of learning to fall and to get back up where I could learn to take more steps. So it started with 500 feet, and then I would stop because I'd be scared I was going to fall and hurt myself. So for the longest time, for 6 months, I couldn't go past 500 feet. The minute I fell and I realized, okay, I can get a bruise and get back up and keep going, my progression toward the 5K became a lot quicker and better as I progressed along. So it's reminding them if they've trained for a marathon or even going to school, they didn't go from grade 1 to PhD overnight, that you got to go through the steps and you learn as much from failing as you do succeeding. But really to try to take them through those steps of really getting them to go, are we solving the problem? Now, how do we get it solved better? Or more importantly, is that the most important problem now? Because if we all wait for perfection, you don't get to experience and enjoy what good can give you. So I try to give them an analogy of what I did for the 5K, or related to things that they had to fail continuously until they got there. Like nobody's gotten their promotion overnight. Nobody's ended up where they are. And we always forget about the struggle it took us to get there once we've achieved something. So I think what I always try to do in coaching them is to remember, let's embrace that struggle. Let's embrace that falling down. Let's embrace that we hit the wall. Let's embrace the journey it took to get there instead of the accomplishment once we're there.
Yeah.
What are some of the sorry, I'm trying to think about this, how to say this. What are some of the trends in Agile that you're following now, or the things that you think about to help your teams and leaders in the organizations that you work in?
The trends of Agile I'm thinking about now are business agility, because I think software development teams, I think people get it. Agile is the way to go because we want to be responsive. We want to deal with the complexity. We get all that. Where I think where I'm focusing my time now is getting the business, the leaders, and the support functions to adopt Agile, of whatever that means to them, to a new way of doing things and thinking. So it's using other practices like design thinking, lean management, and even lean startup philosophies to really make sure that right now it's IT, like technology used to be the biggest lagger to get something out. Now it's more the business and supporting functions, because Agile used to think that's something they do. That's something the engineering team does. But unless the whole organization embraces agility, you're only really getting sub-optimization. So really, I think the trends are extending Agile beyond the engineering team. We training leaders to think it's less about the projects and initiatives they're running and more about the people and the teams and creating the environment and opening up to new practices that are coming out that really, helps capture innovation, like stuff like Lean Canvas and things to be able to co-create things together. Because I think now in a lot of legacy places, we're getting agility at the delivery part, but we're not really integrating it in co-creating and leveraging many different people to really create random experiments from the business all the way down. And just like we like to create vertical slices in architecture, we need to start beginning to create vertical slices across the organization, from the C stack down to the teams. How do we measure an initiative from beginning to end? And it's less about Kanban and visualization and more about how do we co-create, co-validate, and co-learn all together.
Great, thank you.
Well, we've got another about 5 minutes. Stuart, do you want to give us one more question, since your questions are great?
No, I appreciate, Dave, your insights, and it sounds like, I don't think I've actually ever met you, but I believe it sounds like we're aligned. So appreciate hearing it.
And that's the real challenge of, I like how you mentioned the word alignment, because now that we moved Agile in certain pockets, now the biggest challenge comes with aligning all the other business and strategy with that agility. So although I think we're aligned in spirit and practice, I think we need to work together to help organizations be more aligned from the very top of the house to delivery. But it's great meeting you, even if it's on this call. Feel free to reach out to me on Slack or email if you want to chat further sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, Dave, you inspire me every time we speak. You are such a really special, strong person. Anyone who listens to you just, I feel like, can't help but walk away smiling and just feeling empowered. Is there anything you'd want to leave people with who are watching this, listening to this? Anything else that you feel would be really important for people to know?
I think people got to get comfortable being uncomfortable and be okay that none of us know the answer, but how do we all work together to move toward that answer? And it's not about being right, it's about being as wrong as quick as we can till we can get to being right. So let's really work together, co-create and learn. Not only execute well, but the journey into learning to execution. Let's learn to do all that together so we can be better as an organization.
I love that. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dave and Stuart, as well for participating. And for everyone who is watching this, these seminars we are doing as part of Management 3.0. The modern toolkit for management. So go to management3.0.com. You can learn a lot more about what we do and how we help transform companies. And then also, it's also part of Happy Melly, which we focus on making people be happier at work. And that is what the seminar started as well. So we have a community of more than 1,000 people in Slack. David, you're part of it, Stuart as well. And we just talk about practical ways to be happy at work, which is super important. And we have seminars every month. So you can go to happymelly.com to find out exactly when those will be. All right. Anyone else have any final thing to say before we sign off?
I'm sure, yeah. I think every organization has the same access to technology and tools as everyone else. What separates the good companies from the awesome companies is what they invest into their people. What do they invest into how to grow them, how to engage them? And happy means different things to different people, but create a culture where invest into the people so you're not just a good organization, you're a great one.
Completely agreed. I feel aligned as well. Well, thank you, Dave. And this is great. We will have to have you back. And David, if people want to find you or read more about you, go to your website. Where should they contact you?
I would go on LinkedIn and look at me on LinkedIn. I'm David Dame. I have a website, davedame.com, that I haven't updated in forever. So please go to LinkedIn. I have a personal blog called Leading with Imperfect Feet. And I also have a YouTube channel where you can see where I've done videos on new ways of leadership and leading with imperfect feet. So that's just looking for David Dame on Google, and you should be able to find all that.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Stuart. And thanks, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.